Today's session, I would like to discuss with you, first of all, we're going to go through the assignment, but I found that my PGCE students tend to not be as familiar with what is all expected from the lesson plan, because you guys basically only do it this once. The B.Ed students have done it in year 1 and 2 and 3 and then again by 4. So they're a little bit more familiar with it. And I assume you're being taught this in TESF, but I just felt it would be a good thing for me to explain to you where I place the focus. So teaching experience is ultimately my passion. That is why my thesis is based on the experiences of novice teachers. And one of the biggest problems that I have come across is that students don't really know how to write an effective lesson plan. And it's totally understandable because at high school level, we don't really do lesson plans. We basically do a term plan that can be broken down into weeks, but we don't go in every single lesson. What is your introduction? What is your body? What's your conclusion? That is more done in the lower phases. But as you are teachers in training, the expectation is there that you have to fill in a lesson plan properly. So I also do work for Mancosa and for Stadio, and I can clearly see the difference between students that get taught how to fill in a lesson plan, irrespective of which companies it is, and those that are just going by reading the basics and thinking they can wing it. It's really going to be detrimental for you to have that approach. Okay, so that's my introduction sorted out. We're going to have a look at our summative assignment now. This comes straight out of the PDF that has the summative assignment on it. When they tell you a minimum of 20 hours, if you're really sharp with this stuff, you could probably do it in 15, but I think the majority of students really do take about the time that they suggest. And this is the reason why I thought, although tonight's session is not an official session, it would be good for us to just have a touch base. Let's just touch on what is it that is expected so that you can start some of it. And we don't meet then for the first time on the 12th of June for our NSS session. And then you've got to somewhere between work and everything else, fit in 20 hours before the deadline. So let's go and have a look at what exactly it says. So please take note, as before, you do need to reference all the sources that you use correctly. And please make sure that you make use of at least 2 to 3 sources per question. So that means if you've got 3 questions in your assignment, you should have at least 6 to 9 references in your reference list. If you have less than that, it indicates to me as the marker that you have not really read up widely about this topic. And if we can just touch on that again, what exactly indicates that you are busy with a good source? Well, firstly, you can find the surname of the author. Secondly, that you can find the date. The best way to go about searching for these are either via EBSCOhost, which you all have access to, it's part of your student package, or the more simpler one is where you simply click on Google Scholar and you type in your search, and you know that everything it's going to spit out for you as a possibility you'll be able to click on the citing tool, that thing that looks like the inverted comma, and it's going to tell you who wrote it, what year it was written in, and everything else that needs to go about that. So please make sure that your references are up to standard. Then when it comes to your layout, please make sure that you use 1.5 line spacing. It actually does stipulate this to you very clearly at the very end of the POE. It tells you very much how you've got to do this layout. Then they also say you've got to use your font size needs to be 12. Arial times New Roman. I also accept Calibri or any of the other ones that's easy to read. But as far as I can remember correctly, this PDF did stipulate those two. So maybe rather just stick to those. Then if your work gets moderated, a moderator can't say to me, listen, the student did not stick to the specifications. Courtney says, may I please check, when using Scholar, is there a way one can get access to the full articles instead of just the paragraph of the article? Yes, you've got to actually open them up, and then you've got to ask the librarian to show you where you go into, I don't know what they call it, what you guys go into. You would go onto VC students, the SharePoint, and I don't know how you enter the library. Someone has to explain that to you. And often we can find the full article there. So what I tend to do, even for my studies, is I hear what Courtney's saying. Sometimes you open something up and it's only got like an introductory paragraph. And if you want the full article, you've got to pay for it. Which is not worth it. So then just search for another one that actually does give you the full PDF. But in general, the librarian should be able to explain to you how to go about that. With UKZN, I know how to get onto that system, but I'm not too familiar how you guys would go about working into it. But somewhere there has to be something that says library and so forth. I see Avril has responded. If you find an article on Google Scholar, just search for the author or title on the library online database. You should find it. Perfect. Thought I was not using it properly. No, you are using it properly. It can be very frustrating, but that is unfortunately the search engines that we make use of. Avril says you actually have to go onto the VC website for the library. Okay, so I'm not 100% sure. Avril or anyone else that is willing to maybe make for the class a short little video just explaining where to click, how to get into it, I think everybody would appreciate something like that. So let's start looking at what is question 1 all about. So they start off giving you a story there, and it starts off with perhaps the most important influences on modern philosophical thought have been the disseminations by the Greek trio, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. So we're going right back to the same stuff that you covered in assignment 1. So we're dealing with the works of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Their ideas and activities have impacted both the content and pedagogy of modern teaching and learning experiences and are foundational ideas in academic philosophy classes. And now they've given you a statement. So that opening little paragraph is telling you that the work of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle are important. Why? Because that is what education is built on. The next paragraph now places you in a scenario. Imagine that you are at a gathering of academics. Take note, not a gathering of your buddies having a braai and watching rugby or something like this. This is an actual gathering of academics. So think of it like a symposium or something where people are actually talking about academics. During a break, one of them comments that, and this is what the person is saying, the purpose of education is to gain only all that is needed for a comfortable and affluent life. So for those of you that's not English speaking, we had to go look it up, or I looked it up the first time I saw it. So comfortable means your life is easy. Affluent life means you've got lots of money. Okay, and education, if you want to be a teacher, that's not going to be you. We go on. The ideas of Plato are irrelevant, and the study of such philosophy is a wasted effort for education students. So this person is one that says, why are we studying all these things of these people that's dead? This is totally irrelevant. The purpose of education is so that you can have a comfortable life with enough money or lots of money. Now, the paragraph goes on and says, as a student of education philosophy, defend your study of classical philosophy, especially discussing how Plato's allegory of the cave represents and promotes critical thought in education. So you need to go and familiarize yourself with Plato's allegory of the cave. Now, in previous years, in assignment 1, there was a question on the allegory of the cave. That is no longer in there. So in our NSS session, I will share that with you guys in detail. The easiest way to do this is, please, not for references purposes, but for understanding purposes. Go onto YouTube and just go look Allegory of the Cave. Get an idea of what this story is all about. Then go look up an actual article that discusses the allegory of the cave. If someone can remind me, I can see if I still got my stuff on my, I do still have it. I must just find it, of what I used in previous years, which is a very nice discussion of all of these things. I will probably end up incorporating that in the NSS in any case. So basically, they start off with the first paragraph saying to us the works of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle are important because education is based on it, even modern education. The next paragraph puts you in a situation where they tell you you're at an event where there's lots of academic discussions on education. One of the people make this specific comment stating that the purpose of education to him or her is not to study philosophy, but to have a comfortable life with money. So now you, as an education philosophy student, needs to defend why we should use the classical philosophies. And they then go on top of just normal classical philosophy, you need to discuss Plato's allegory of the cave. In your essay, in which you write an essay in which you critically do the following 4 bullets. Respond to the academic about what philosophy of education is. So that's a whole section on its own. What is philosophy of education? Get the person to understand exactly what's going on. The next one, explain why it is so relevant to teaching and learning. Why do we have to have philosophy of education in today's life? Third bullet, discuss your beliefs about the purposes of education. Now, this is your beliefs. Now, let's not have a repeat of question 1B or 2B in your as first assignment. So although it's asking you for your beliefs, you are basing your beliefs on the work of other people. So if Robin wants to pipe up and say, I personally feel that idealism really doesn't have a place, I'm going to say to her, but why do you say so? And then she would hopefully substantiate her sentence by saying, because idealism focuses on A, B, and C. Straight away, I'm going to say, says who? Who told Robin that idealism focuses on A, B, and C? So although it's asking you for your beliefs, you still have to use references because you are basing your beliefs on the work of other people. Remember, we did not live in the times that these people lived. So you couldn't have just bumped into Plato and quickly have a chat with him. And now it's your own opinion that you're matching everything to. You are basing your arguments on information that you've gathered, be it from me or a source or whatever. That is where you're basing your discussion on. But you cannot reference me because I'm not an academic that's been published. You also cannot reference my slides, but you can find material that's going to support your arguments. Whether you are for it or against it, that's what you've got to go through. And then the last bullet says, argue how Plato's allegory of the cave contributes to educational critical thinkers in the 21st century. So contextualize your response according to the specific phase that you are training in. Because remember, this is created not just for PGCE students, the other students have also used it. But what they're saying here is you have to be specific. You have to use either senior phase or you've got to use FET. Chris, go ahead.
Joe, just a quick question there. Where it says they make particular reference to Plato, so the ideas of Plato are relevant. So he was idealism, right?
Yes.
Okay, so are we arguing specifically against idealism or for idealism because he argued against it? Or are we arguing for both idealism and realism? I know we're talking about the allegory of the cave, but do we need to mention realism here or not?
You don't have to refer to idealism or realism yet. What you are defending is the study of philosophy of
It's
education.
philosophy in general. Okay, now I just wanted to make sure because of that specific mention to Plato. So
yes,
we can interpret that
but
as
it's not Plato.
Socrates.
Yeah, it's not Plato we're just referring to. We're referring to the allegory of the cave, which is a very, if you go look it up, you'll understand what's going on. So what basically happened is it's these prisoners that lived in this cave. And what they thought was reality was only a glimpse of it. So one of them gets freed and he comes back to say to the other guys, listen, you've had it all wrong. This is not what the world outside is all about. And they don't want to listen to him, because his reality is not their reality. So I don't want to use the word reality because it sounds like realism, but that's not what the focus is here. The focus is, you can discuss idealism, realism, pragmatism, the whole caboodle if you want to, but the big focus here is on why should we study philosophy of education? Okay. Why is that going to help you as a future teacher to have a better understanding of education? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, great. So they want you to refer to, in your arguments, okay, when you are making arguments, you have to relate it to either senior phase or FET phase, whichever is your preference. It doesn't matter because I know you guys actually teach both. Then they go on and they say, please note, you are required to reference the sources. Your answer should be about 3 pages, so 800 to 1,000 words. To me, it's not quite 3,000. That to me, 800 to 1,000 words should be about 2 pages, not 3 pages, but that is a 12 point. Our others were 11, so maybe that's the difference. Please just indicate to me the word count. Don't look at the page, the amount of pages, rather focus on the amount of words that you've used. And they're also specified here, New Roman or Arial, so please just stick to those. Please use the assessment grid to analyze what it is that you are saying. So I'm sorry, my slides are all over the show. I tried to convert them to PDF and my computer just kept on telling me that there's a problem. So let's just have a look then at what question 1 does ask of you. Okay, so I suggest you guys use, yes, you can always go 15% over. So you could actually go to 1,150. I would not go less than that. So Jennifer, word count is always not your references included. So basically where you open the bracket to put whatever, that's not part of your word count. Okay, so please don't work backwards. I nearly had a heart attack when one of my research students told me now the other day that they actually write the whole thing and then they go find references. I'm like, no, you first find references and build your arguments around that. So basically look at your word count at the bottom and then just subtract. If you've had 10 quotes, you know it's about 20 words that you've got to take off that total, then you know you're on track, something like that. So what's following is actually the layout suggestion. So you're going to answer this. You're going to start off with question. You're going to have a numbering 1.1 introduction, and then you're going to address these bullets in them. An introductory statement that immediately asserts the student's position of defending philosophy of education. So are you for it or against it? Okay, what is your position? Then second bullet, there are 3 assertions in this statement. So see the colors below. The first one is that the purpose of education is to gain only all the needed, what is needed for a comfortable life. The second assertion is that the ideas of Plato is irrelevant. The third one is that the study of such philosophy is a wasted effort for education students. So there are 3 arguments that's being put here. So you as a student must, while answering, defeat each one of these ideas, 1, 2, and 3. So they're actually telling you, they want you to explain. You mustn't agree with the dude that says these things are irrelevant. Okay, so Robin makes a statement. I find references, read references, think, write, and then go back and try and find who said what for in-text referencing. It takes ages. So what I tend to do, so this is a bit of a tip from me that's had to write lots. Maybe some of our students, I know some of you are also busy with your PhDs and so forth. So what I tend to do is I read sources and I find an interesting article. I go and copy the paragraph that's interesting and I paste it in the Word document that I'm going to type in. And at the end of it, I put the reference so I know where I got the source from. And I make it a different color from black. So I've got all of these sources that I'm going to then incorporate in my writing. Now I've got all my things. So firstly, create a framework. Then you go and plot in all these paragraphs that you want to discuss. And now it's easy. Now you've got a basic outlay. You just have to change it to your words. You've got to incorporate maybe what Jennifer, Chris, and Robin have both said, or all three said, and make it one. That is by far the easier way to do. So Mecha says, what if you agree that the study of philosophy is a wasted effort? If you agree with it, then the module has been a failure. Then you have not understood the purposes behind it. And I cannot influence you one way or the other. That's all I can state with regards to that. So Wesley says, Excel table with quotes and my own opinion columns author. Yes, I've watched quite a few of my professors have shown us how they do it that way. It also works very well. You've got to play around and find one that works for you. Okay, so we've dealt with bullet 2, which deals with all these different colors. Now bullet 3 says, what is the meaning of classical philosophy? And then what were the roles of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle? So if you look at that, that is quite a lot of stuff that you've got to write. I mean, you can go write a book on the roles of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. You need to keep in line or keep in mind the fact that you are limited to about 1,000 words. This is only the introduction that you've done so far. So I would go and write a fairly shortish paragraph of maybe 3 to 4 lines per bullet. Not much more than that, because then you're going to get stuck for word count. Then point 1.2 of this should be the relevance of philosophy to education. You can answer those bullets. What's the importance? What are your beliefs about the purpose of education? Now there, just to fill in what Mecha has said there, you can tell me what your beliefs and the purpose of education is. Take note, not philosophy education, just what do you feel is the purpose of education? Because that dude says the purpose of education is to live a good life with lots of money. Then number 3, how will you respond to the following quote? The purpose of education, it's just the whole story that relates to that. So now you're going to just discuss it a little bit deeper. But please take note, the last bullet is so important. How do your arguments link with foundation, FET, further education and training phase or senior phase? How will your arguments that you're raising in bullets 1, 2, and 3 link with your phase? So you have to make that link, because I'm going to be for that link. You'll see just now in the rubric. 1.3, we're going to discuss the relevance of Plato's allegory. What is the allegory about? Again, it should be a short paragraph of probably 3 to 4 typed lines. Then you need to go through what is critical thinking. So Chris, if you can see where it goes here, Plato was not that much part of critical thinking. It came later on, but we can still use it. How does Plato's work relate to education today? And then you will write your conclusion. I would not go through a summary. I would just give you a nice summary of what it is that you were trying to argue. And that brings us to the end of that discussion. So if you go look at what are the marks going to go for? So the introduction is going to be, I'm going to just go to the top category always. It shows a deep and clear understanding of the meaning of classical philosophy. So you need to tell me what's the meaning of it, of the Greek philosophy. You need to tell me what's the roles of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And you must clearly have signposted the main aspects of the essay that's going to follow. So that is what I'm going to look for in the introduction. Then we're going to go to the relevance of philosophy. I'm not going to read through the rest. You can see there for yourself. Take note, the last sentence clearly contextualizes the argument to phase of teaching. So I need to see you linking that to your phase. Take note, the second category, which is 5 to 6 marks, also expects it. Okay, 3 or 4, contextualize argument to this phase. If you do not contextualize it, you end up with a 0 to 2. Does not contextualize argument to the phase of teaching. So it is really very important that you link it to your phase. Yes, Chris.
What is an example of contextualizing it to the phase exactly?
Okay, so if you are saying to me that it is relevant for students to understand, or for teachers to understand, how critical thinking works, so that when they teach a module or a subject such as life orientation, they can encourage their students to do whatever. So I know career choices as part of life orientation is in the grade 11 syllabus. So you can say, this can help me as a teacher to apply elements of critical thinking when I teach career choices to my grade 11s. Then I can see, okay, you've linked it. You can see how to use this knowledge somewhere else. Does that help you to understand?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. We move on to the next section. Plato's allegory of the cave. It counts 7 marks. Take note, you need to give an explanation of it, of critical thinking. You need to explain to me what is the cave, critical thinking, how does it relate to 21st century? So there's 3 legs that I'm looking for when I mark that specific section. And then academic writing, so that's just your normal structure and your style. I think most of you actually end up doing quite well. Proofreading is where, this is now where if you have what I call a hanging comma or a hanging full stop. So you've got a word, a space, a full stop, a space. That does not tell me that editing has gone through. Because if you are typing in Word for Windows, it's going to highlight those things for you. And you would have been able to pick up that there are errors. The same with when you do a reference and your bracket is attached to the word, instead of saying you end it off with the word proofreading, space, open bracket. All those things boil down to your structure and your style. Question 2. Paulo Freire, and you guys dealt with him in assignment 2, was a Brazilian educationalist and philosopher whose radical ideas about pedagogy, learning, and knowledge led to the establishment of the critical pedagogy movement. Freire held extremely negative views of mainstream approaches to education, using the metaphor of the banking system to describe them. Freire argued that mainstream education, as it is predominantly practiced, revolves around teachers' attempts to deposit knowledge into students who are understood to be passive, empty accounts. Okay? And you can go and look at that article further there. Although he located his philosophy in South America as an anti-colonial response, it also has relevance to South Africa. Discuss the influences of Paulo Freire's Reconstructionism and African philosophy on creating transformative practices and spaces in the classroom. When discussing these, specify how you would use the ideas and principles of these philosophies in your specific phase. Again, senior phase, FET phase. Your essay should include the following: critical pedagogy, banking, and so forth. Again, it should be 800 to 1,000. So I'm happy for you to go to 1,150. It shouldn't be more than that. Again, please don't look at the page numbers, rather look at the word count. So basically your essay, these are just the instructions that were given. This is how I suggest you do your layout. If someone can just remind me, I can actually send you this template. I've got it that it's not broken up like this so that you guys can just use it. So your introduction would be what is the background of critical pedagogy and so forth. How do all of these relate to South Africa? 2.2, you're going to discuss critical theory. And 2.3, you're going to discuss pedagogy. Take note. Both of these. First, you explain to me what it is, and then you tell me how is this relevant to transforming the practices and spaces in South African classrooms. Then we've got the banking theory and social reconstructionism, the same story. Explain to me what they are and how are they relevant for us to transform education in South Africa. Here's a little bit of a deviation of it. Now, 2.6 is African philosophy. Explain what it is. Now they go deeper. Discuss Ubuntu and community-centeredness as transformative practices. And how does this philosophy link with Freire's? Because remember, African philosophy is also anti-colonialism, which is what Freire's one was, but his was just anti-colonialism within South America. And then you're going to have your conclusion. So let's just quickly have a look at the rubric. Is pretty important. So again, you can see what your introduction was. Then your critical theory, the next bit, you've got to discuss quite a lot. You've got to discuss critical theory, critical pedagogy, banking education, and social reconstructionism. Those are all to be discussed in that specific point. And you've got to link them to how they work in the South African classroom. Then you've got your African philosophy that you've got to link with how does that work with Freirean pedagogy. And then you've got your structure and your style again. Then we've got question 3. Question 3 consists of 2 parts. Part A, which is a sort of a story that you're going to teach or write, and part B, which is going to be a lesson plan. So just so that you can understand what's cooking in the 2. So in part A, your introduction, choose one teacher-centered philosophy and one learner-centered philosophy. So that don't now be like grade 5s. What must we do? You've got to choose one of each. Not can I have 2 of the one and none of the other? Nope. One teacher-centered, one learner-centered. Okay, you've picked them. Now what? Clearly identify each choice. With other words, tell me what it was and how does it work. And explain the differences between these 2 pedagogic styles. In other words, why is one teacher-centered and the other learner-centered? Discuss the main characteristics of each philosophy, including their metaphysical and the epistemological foundations. Again, this stuff popped up in assignment 1 where you guys did that comparison. So, you may present your discussions in a table format, but take note, you cannot use bullets within a table. So please don't do that. Then, after you've now discussed these 2 thingies, you are now going to go on and you are going to tell me, discuss your rationale, why the chosen philosophical style is most suited in which you are teaching, the phase that you are teaching. Explain how your lesson will proceed, including how you would define your role, the teacher, and all of that. Again, it's that column that you guys did for iStask 2. Are there occasions for using this type of philosophical style that you did not choose? Okay, we've missed somewhere along the way. Yes, if I can remember correctly, that there's a in my opinion, a missing instruction. So first bullet, you discuss these 2. Then you're going to choose the one that you like the best. Yes, Chris.
Sorry, are you saying no bulleted points at all? Or is that just specifically when we use a table?
Just in a table.
Okay,
You
so we
don't
can
use
use
bullets in
bullets if we have a heading.
Yes, definitely, but just not in a table format. Okay, so to me, there was a missing instruction. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I have not looked at the new one if it's been updated from what it was beforehand. I actually have it open here. Give me a minute. Let me just quickly check what's cooking here. No, they didn't change it. Okay, so let me explain to you what you need to do. For the second bullet, you've now discussed whichever two above. Now you pick one that you feel is the most suitable for your phase and what you are teaching. So, and then you're going to tell me, okay, so I like a teacher-centered approach. Then they go, are there occasions for using this type of philosophical style that you did not choose? Now, none of you can say to me the answer is no, because there's always going to be an occasion to use the others. If you prefer a teacher-centered approach, which most high school teachers tend to do, there is space, no matter how serious your subject. Even if you're doing maths, you can still do a learner-centered approach in which they are doing a discussion or a project or something like that. So they want you to discuss your reasons plus give examples. And then in number B, you are going to create a lesson plan. You're going to use the standard lesson template that you guys should by now have. What's very different though is that you're going to create a 30-minute period. Now that is fairly short. Most high schools are 45 minutes or up to an hour, okay? They're very specific because we don't want you to have a very, very long one. It's got to be a 30-minute lesson period. Ensure that all of those goodies are filled in. Okay, let's go look at what's cooking here. You are required to reference the sources that you consult. The length of the lesson plan will depend on what it is that you're planning to put in there. Okay, so we can't really say how long this all is going to be. So we've got this all sorted out. Part A, let's just break it down again. So again, I'll give you guys this template and it will help you to understand what it is that you've got to answer. So you're going to have an introduction and you are going to discuss that. As you can see on the board, I'm not going to read them to you again. Then you're going to give me a rationale, okay, which is missing in the instructions. So I'm telling you this is what you need to do. From the two styles that you discussed in 3.1, you need to choose one that you feel is the most suited to the phase in which you are teaching or studying. Explain how your lesson would proceed, including how you would define and those bullets. Are the occasions that the other one can be used? Discuss your reasons. Then part B, we're moving on to the actual lesson plan. You've got to use the template that we all have. Select a topic related to the subject or the learning area in the phase that you are going to do. So if you're starting to teach business studies, it's got to be a business studies subject and so forth. Okay? The progressive phases of the lesson must be visible. The introductory, teaching, and the teaching and learning phase, closure, and so forth. I'll discuss that with you guys just now. In each section, explain how the steps, the phases of your lesson plan you outlined are related to the philosophical style that you have chosen. You need to have strengths and weaknesses. After the lesson plan, provide a short overview of the strengths and the weaknesses of the philosophical approach that you selected. Okay, please note you are required to reference blah, blah, blah. Okay. Oh, what's happening now? Okay, so I don't know what's happened. Yeah, that thing doesn't want to copy. But this is what your thing looks like. Okay, ignore this, be it intermediate phase, whatever. This is just to show you. So you were going to write in your name for student name, your student number, your qualification for you guys are going to be PGCE. Your year of study, are you in year 1 or year 2? Doesn't really matter, just has to be there. Then your lesson details, you're going to tell me what grade is your lesson going to be at. So you guys need to choose between 7, 8, 9 for SP or 10, 11, 12 for FET. Doesn't really matter. Leandre is asking, can we make use of information from assignment 2? Yes, you can. So you're going to choose your grade, then you're going to choose your subject. For argument's sake, business studies. What's the topic? Entrepreneurship, for argument's sake. Okay, the date of the lesson, I don't really care. Make it up. I don't care what lesson this is. No, you're not going to do a lesson reflection. We're not talking about the strengths and the weaknesses of your lesson. We'll quickly go back there. We're talking about the strengths and the weaknesses of the philosophical approach that you have selected. So if you're going to go with idealism and your lesson is based on idealism, afterwards you're going to tell me, these are the advantages of my lesson being an idealistic lesson. These are the weaknesses of that. So don't get the two. You're not doing a lesson evaluation. Duration of, okay, so the number of learners is quite important because it's going to tell me as the marker how big this class is. So if you've got 40 kids in the class, you're not going to be able to do the stuff that you can do with a class of, say, for argument's sake, 20. And that is going to greatly affect the teaching style that you're going to choose. The bigger the class, if you're sitting with a class of 40, it's much easier to use a teacher-centered approach than a learner-centered approach. And that is why I need to know the number of learners. Then you're going to go for the duration of the lesson. You don't have a choice. It's been specified in the instructions. It's 30 minutes. So make sure that you get that right. Then you have your CAP-specific focus. You guys should know how to do that. Then you're going to give me a brief summary of what it is that you're going to cover. Please be careful that that brief summary is not a total repeat of the whole lesson. You just have to do that quite short and sweet so that I know that it's there. If someone can remind me at a later stage, I can go and dig around through last year's ones and ask permission of a student to share it with you, and then you'll have a good idea of what this can look like. Then you've got to create your lesson objectives. Okay. Yes, you can use stuff from assignment 1. So students, this is now where I'm going to move into your teaching experience mode. A lesson should never, ever have more than 3, maximum 4 objectives. This specific lesson is 30 minutes. So if you are giving me 4 objectives, remember, you've got an introduction and a conclusion. So let's say those are all 5 minutes, okay? So that takes off 10 minutes off it. You are left with 20 minutes in which you've got to cover 4 outcomes. You've got 5 minutes per outcome. That's unrealistic. So ideally, you should have 2 to 3 objectives only in a lesson. If you've got more than that, then you are busy incorporating too many things. Now, it can become tricky, especially in languages where a lot of the languages, there are objectives that can get squeezed into a lesson, even though that's not the focus. So in that case, look, what is it that I want to teach? And choose 2 to 3 main objectives to cover that material or to master that material, and let that be your objectives. And please take note, since I am the inclusive education person in the company, curriculum integration. There's no such thing as if relevant. It is always going to be relevant. What does that mean? Which other subject links with what you are teaching? So if you are teaching business, English is going to relate to it. If you're teaching people how to budget, maths is going to be part of it. If you are teaching business studies, yeah, okay, so that's business studies sorted out. If you're teaching maths, okay, you're going to use English to teach maths. So there's an integration of the language. You are probably, if you are doing, let's say, budgeting or hire purchase and things like that in maths, probably maths lit, you can still incorporate the fact that there's integration with business studies or EMS if you're in the lower phases. If you're English, if your language that you're teaching is English, you can link it with whatever the students' additional languages, be it Afrikaans, Xhosa, Zulu, whichever one. Could be one of those. If you are teaching them a poem, for argument's sake, does that poem refer to anything from the past? So with other words, does that poem actually contain elements of history? Then you could link it with that. If it's about learning certain lessons, you can then link it with life orientation. So there's always integration that takes place. Then you need to discuss the rationale of your lesson design. You've got those 3 questions that you've got to answer. If you do it that way, you'll be fine and you'll know what's actually going on. Oopsie, this one came out a little bit wonky. So your teaching and learning strategies. What strategies are you planning to use? You've got to tell me what they are. Which ones are you using in your introduction, in your teaching and learning phase, and in your conclusion? So although you've not told me that, remember, you've picked in question 3A, you've already picked for me the philosophy that you're going to use that's going to determine your teaching strategies. So make sure that your teaching strategy links up with that philosophy. So this is where you are very much going to use, what do you call it? SFTL. Okay, you're going to use the information from there with that as well. Beulah says, can the recording link be shared on the group after the session, please? I have to share it on YouTube like I do with all my other recordings. So yes, I will share it with you as soon as I can. Okay, now we move on to the actual lesson plan. So my point of view is you've got to create a lesson hook. So I'm going to, the next couple of minutes that I'm going to talk to you, although this is for a FOED assignment, this is more for me telling you this is how you make a lesson exciting. So first of all, you've got to create a hook. And what would be the best way to create a hook? So they give you some suggestions, but in general, with teenagers, okay, something such as music works wonders. So if you're in an under-resourced school where you can't show projectors and videos and things like that, if you've got your cell phone and you play a song in a class of 40, everybody's going to be able to hear that. So you could use something like that. You could introduce a role play that you get 3 or 4 students beforehand to practice something and then do a role play to the class as an introduction. Please do not tell me you are going to recap what you did in the previous lesson. That's not exciting. You're going to get a 4 or a 5 out of 10 for your introduction phase. Make sure that it is actually exciting. Then you're going to go to your teaching and learning phase. What am I checking here? Remember, I'm not checking your content. With other words, do you know how to teach business studies? I'm checking here whether your teaching strategy relates to the philosophy that you've chosen. Then you're going to have your closure phase. So there, if you click on the link that's in your lesson plan, there are 22 powerful closure activities. Again, I try to always link my closure phase with my introduction phase. So if you played them a song, get them to sing a song. If you played them a video, play another video or have them have a discussion. You could also, another easy way to start an introduction to a lesson is to have a little quiz. You could either use actual Quizlet, and students have done that and shared it with me, or you could just have a normal quiz that you do on your board in your classroom, and you split the class into 3 teams and you've got a few questions to get them into the mode. Because what's the purpose of the introduction? Is to get the kids into the thinking mode of whatever your topic's going to be. So your closure phase is then going to be linking up with that. And then guys, please, a very common error that students are making for either TESF or for FOED or any other module where you've got a lesson plan, you have to include an assessment. You can't say to me this lesson won't have an assessment, because then it means I've got to give you 0 out of 10 for your assessment, because all of these things count 10 marks. So even if your assessment is then just, did they participate in the group discussion? Let's say you had an activity that you made them do. You had a quiz. Did they participate, yes or no? You can even have your quiz questions can be part of your assessment. Yes, you can definitely do that. You can't, because it's a link to an activity, you can share the link, but you have to discuss it with me or on the lesson plan so that I can see. So in other words, the link to the quiz or to Kahoot is just a bonus. You don't have to have it there. It just helps me to understand where you're going. Nathan says, I'm trained in smartboard usage. Could I use a cool smart? Yes, definitely. Go ahead for it, Nathan. You can definitely do it. You need to talk me through it in your lesson plan. But as I've just explained to Leandra, you can share the link if it can take me to a specific point. Yes, Chris.
Just a quick question on that. So if we say, for example, that we would find a YouTube video, let's say it's accounting, and I want to show them source documents. And I say in my lesson plan that I'm going to show the students a video I've made. Under the resources section, must I just make up a YouTube thing? Because obviously I haven't gone and actually made that YouTube video link. So then must I just put in a fictitious YouTube link as what it would be the reference to? Or are we expected to actually go and make a YouTube video?
I would not put something fictitious because I don't know if you're going to be moderated and that person might just decide to click on the link. So I would just state, I will play a video that I would have created beforehand based on this. And this is what's covered in the video. Then I know, okay.
Yeah, I'm asking specifically because I put that for one of the other subjects where we had to do a lesson plan, and the feedback I got was you should have included the link. And I was thinking, but I've said here that I'm going to make it. This with students, it doesn't actually exist in real life. That's why I'm asking the question. So yeah, I'll just say that I've created a link and then just maybe put a block saying video link.
Yeah, I would honestly try to not do that because I can see where the other lecturer came from. I would rather use an actual existing YouTube clip. Use it as an activity. A fun way could be that the students can make an activity afterwards that they can post on YouTube, and that could be your assessment to see whether they've actually mastered it. But that's not going off the topic. But I would steer clear of things like that because you're looking for trouble if you do that.
Okay.
Thanks. Then, as Mucha, I think it was earlier that asked, please take note, you do not need to do this reflection. It's not part of your assignment, so please, you don't need to add it in there. And then this just explains to you all over again what the assignment was then all about. And that is the end of it all. So I'm glad that I've had this chance. I think it's solved or sorted out quite a few of you to have a better idea of what is it that is expected. I will do my best to share with you guys an example. I'll have to go dig around and ask the students permission to share an example of an assignment from last year that did quite well, just so that you guys can see, because I found this last year was the first year that they did it. Luckily, I know the developer, so he helped me to put this all together. And it was actually quite daunting. So I just really feel if you guys have an example to look at, it helps you to see what to do. So Mecha says the same with Kahoot. Do we have to show the quiz we might use? I think you're going to have to. That is why it's easier to use something that you've already done. It's going to just make it easier. Otherwise, just post the questions that you're planning to put in Kahoot. You might not have to create the actual Kahoot, but just say, I'm going to create a Kahoot and these are the type of questions I'm planning to use. Then you've covered that. Jennifer, I'll make it seem easier. I'm glad you think so. Clinton, must we state word count? Yes, just basically for question 1 and 2. Question 3 does not require a word count. They didn't. I can't remember 3A does have it, but your lesson plan really doesn't need a word count. Robin says, can we delete the reference block to reduce space and save assigned score? The lesson plan format accumulates huge. Yeah, but Robin, you mustn't worry about the similarity report. I open every single one up and I check what is similar. And the minute it highlights to me the template, with other words, everybody's using the same headings, it doesn't matter. Okay, don't delete that, because then I've got to nail you for not having a reference list, and that's minus 10%. So rather don't do that. Put it in, doesn't matter. I expect your similarity report for this assignment to be around about 50, 60%, because I'm giving you guys a template to work with. Anybody else got a question? Wesley says, should it be attached as a separate doc or incorporated in the PDF? It's always easier if you can incorporate it in a PDF, but I do know that some people struggle with that. So if you want to upload two, but please, they need to be uploaded simultaneously. Don't have a link and then submit and then resubmit something else, because the second similarity is going to cut it out. He is speaking about the reflection part, Joe. Oh, yes. Oh, thank you. You mean like this story, this. Yes, please delete it. Thank you very much, Beulah. Thanks for telling me. Yeah, you definitely don't have to have that. It's unnecessary because you're not going to fill it in. Okay, anybody else got a question? It's a pleasure, Robin. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.